And residents of the Palestinian village of Susya in the southern Hebron Hills are fearing a possible demolition of their homes, perhaps even in the coming days. It wouldn't be the first time, though, they've experienced such an ordeal. I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-ari was in Susya today to hear what locals had to say.
The Palestinian village of Susya in the southern West Bank. You could be forgiven for thinking this was a refugee camp or perhaps a temporary Bedouin settlement, but that is not the case. Palestinians have lived here in one form or another since at least the early 19th century. Nasser is one of them. He and his family are worried that even these makeshift tents and homes may be demolished in the coming days after IDF soldiers visited and examined the structures earlier this week.
Before demolition, an overseer from the civil administration comes and takes pictures and makes records. And one came 2 days ago and did all that. I don't know when they want to actually do the demolition.
For residents of Susya, displacement has become a constant reality. In fact, this village has been demolished no less than 5 times.
When there's a demolition, they come at 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 5, and that's it. We take out our things and everything is destroyed. The army comes, the police, bulldozers. What happens after? We rebuild. We have no choice. We have nowhere else to go.
The area has a rich history, and Jews also have a significant presence here. This ancient synagogue is just across the road and dates back to the 5th century. Palestinians used to live on these grounds, but they were kicked out and moved to Susya's current site nearby after the discovery of the synagogue and the erection of an archaeological sanctuary. That was in 1986, and ever since the residents have been struggling to keep hold of what little they have left. The Israeli authorities say these structures are illegal, while the locals have petitioned the government to authorize permanent construction, so far unsuccessfully.
We submitted all the paperwork. It costs a lot of money. You bring in an appraiser, the hearings are always delayed. We're told this or that isn't in order. Each time it's something else.
Some of the structures here are more or less permanent, but they're disguised as something else. As you can see here, we have a concrete wall that is covered by a tent flap, so as not to alert the attention of the Israeli authorities. Rabbi Arik Asherman is the president of Rabbis for Human Rights. He also fears another demolition is imminent after a high court judge canceled a restraining order last week.
The fear being that before this case is heard, now scheduled for August 3rd, the army could come and just create facts on the ground, to demolish the place, not wait for the court, to preempt the court. That means that any minute now, the army could come here and wipe this place off the map.
Susya's residents are denied legal status, while only a few feet away, a Jewish settlement is provided water and electricity by the state.
The water pipe is only 60 meters away, near the olive tree, on our own land, running under our olives. The army base uses it, but we can't.
In Susya, locals collect their own water, while electricity is provided by these solar panels funded by the German government. Whether or not these tents and homes are left standing, it seems justice in Susya is still far off.
And Shai Ben-ari joins me now on set with a response from the Israeli military.
True, Nuri, good evening. The response is from the coordinator of government activities in the territories. That is basically an IDF unit responsible for implementing the government's policy in the West Bank. It is as follows. The matter concerns a group of illegal houses adjacent to the archaeological site of Susya, which has been expanded over the years despite cease and desist orders that have been handed out on site and in blatant violation of interim orders presented in the context of hearings on the subject at the High Court of Justice. Now, for the residents of Susya, whom we spoke to, this reaction is quite insufficient. The solution currently provided by the Israeli authorities is for the residents of Susya to actually remove themselves, to relocate themselves to the nearby village of Yatta, which basically they say, they point out that solution essentially comes at the expense of other Palestinians, and it is therefore unsatisfactory in their eyes. They also point out there are plenty of examples of illegal Jewish settlements unrecognized by Israel, which somehow eventually become legalized one way or another. They also point out that there are plenty of Jewish illegal settlements that somehow the state finds a way to provide with water, with electricity, with other infrastructure. So it would be certainly difficult to make the case that all are equal in the eyes of the law, at least when it comes to the West Bank. You could make the case, of course, that the Israeli government itself is ultimately responsible for this situation and not the IDF. That case, I think, could be made.
Does it appear that the Israeli government or the IDF, in the combination of decisions that are being made on these places, is looking at the long term? Because what we've seen here in your report is a very sort of step-by-step solution that seems to be creating potentially a much worse situation in the long term.
At the end of the day, this is a continuation of the status quo. It has to be remembered, demolitions are a matter of routine in the West Bank. This is not the only case. This is perhaps a certain special, very interesting case where you have a village that has existed for many years in very temporary housing, let's say. But there are plenty of cases where demolitions go on because a great number of buildings, Palestinian buildings in the West Bank, are simply considered illegal, and it is a matter of routine for the IDF to come in and demolish them. But that is a continuation of the status quo, I would say.
Shai Ben-ari, thanks very much for this. Thanks for bringing us this story.
No problem.